Now, this morning we're going to conclude our sermon series on, it's called Not Just Child's Play. So these are stories we typically, teach our kids over in the kids area. So we've looked at Noah and the Ark and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These are the stories like we would teach our kids. And, this morning we're going to look at Joseph and this really cool coat that his dad gave him. And we'll start off by, and you have to start the story by going back in his family line a little bit. So there was a man whose name was Abraham. And Abraham was married to a woman whose name was Sarah. And Abraham would be known as the father of Israel. So there's a night that God was talking to Abraham and Sarah, and God said, I want you two to look at the sky. And we can assume it was a clear night, and they looked at the sky, and all they would see is just like millions of stars painted across the nighttime sky. And God made them a promise. God said, one day, your offspring is going to far outnumber all these stars that you see in the sky. This will be your land, and these will be your people, and you'll be a blessing from this point forward. So Sarah and Abraham, they were excited about this. They started to try to have kids. They couldn't do it. We've been there before. Many of you have been there before. It's like this helpless feeling, like it stinks. And they tried, and they tried, and they tried some more, and finally they just gave up. And then one day, neither of them were young, neither of them were really childbearing age anymore, but God said, you're going to have a baby. And you know what Sarah did? Sarah laughed. She laughed because it's impossible. We've tried back when, things were better and it didn't work. And then her laughter, though, it turned into this laughter of joy because she got pregnant. They had to turn in their Social Security check and get another job. And, the room that they would play cards in became the nursery. And all of a sudden they had a child. And you know what they named the child? They named the child Laughter. So in Hebrew to English, laughter translates to Isaac. Isaac was the name of their son. And this son was the second most anticipated birth in the history of the Bible. There would be one more later, and his name would be Jesus. So Isaac, he really wasn't much of a go-getter. The thing that Isaac was most famous for was something he did not do. God wanted to test Abraham's faith. God says, take this child up to the top of the mountain, and I want you to sacrifice a child. All God was doing there, and don't read too much into this. You're not Abraham. We can't make this application to us. But he says, I want you to sacrifice your child. Of course, God stopped Abraham before he made him do this. And this is what Isaac would be known for. Isaac got married to a woman named Rebecca. Rebecca and Isaac have two kids. They're twins. The older one is Esau. And then the younger one, they named him Grabber. And the reason they named him Grabber is because he was grabbing at his brother's heel, because he wanted to be the first one out, because he knew that being the first one out, he was going to get the father's birthright, and he was going to get the father's blessing. Now, in the Hebrew to English, Grabber would translate to Jacob. Now, you've heard of Jacob before. Jacob was a crook. The Bible does not try to hide it. Jacob, he stole his brother Esau's birthright. He stole his brother Esau's blessing. He really frustrated Esau. He knew Esau was going to strangle him, so he went to another land. He found this guy, Laban. He took his daughters and pretty much everything else that wasn't nailed down. After Esau calmed down, he went back to Israel, where he sent everybody out ahead of him, and he was getting ready to cross a river. It was the Jabbok River, which is an entry point into what is now modern-day Israel. And Jacob, to this point, he had grabbed everything. He had just taken whatever he'd want up to this point in his life. And all of a sudden, he tries to go back and grab one more thing, his land, from his brother Esau. And it didn't quite happen as easily as everything else had for him. He ran into a stranger. The stranger started to wrestle him. And it was a wrestling match, and Jacob just thought, I'm going to overpower this angel just like I overpower everybody else. But the problem here is the angel wasn't just an angel. The angel was God. And God eventually took his left hand and he swatted Jacob's right hip and broke Jacob's hip with one single blow. Jacob was holding on at this point, and he says, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. God blessed him right then and there. God changed his name from Grabber or Jacob to Israel. And Israel would have meant the one who struggles with people and the one who struggles with God and the one who perseveres and the one who wins. So Jacob, he had 4 wives. Again, a different context, a different culture. The youngest wife was his favorite. There was 12 kids. The youngest wife was the mother of the last 2. Number 11 was Joseph. Number 12 was Benjamin. And this is where we pick up this morning's story. So, how would you feel like if your parents just blatantly played favorites to one of your siblings? If that would frustrate you, raise your hand. So for those of you who don't, I assume you're totally fine with that. Either that or you have 2 injured arms, or you weren't paying attention, which I'm such a dynamic speaker, I don't think that one's a possibility. So it would hurt a lot, and there would be 2 emotions that would emerge. Emotion number 1 is going to be envy. Emotion number 2 is going to be jealousy. So there is a difference between envy and jealousy. So I'm going to talk about envy first, okay? Envy occurs when we lack a desired attribute or possession that somebody else has. So, for example, you can envy her hair, you can envy her shoes, you can envy his golfing ability, you can envy his grill. You together can envy their house. You together can envy their kid that has a 4.95 grade average and has got a 36 in the ACT twice. So here you're envying an attribute or a possession that they have. Now, jealousy is always going to involve a third person. So jealousy occurs when somebody stands in the way of a desired relationship that you want with somebody else. So envy is always going to involve 2 people. Jealousy is always going to involve 3 people. So let's just use these words in a sentence, okay? As Fred was sitting in his 1996 Dodge Dart at the stoplight, he was envious of the man who was next to him driving a 2018 Ford F550 Super Diesel monster truck with a lift kit. See, old Fred, he's at 180th and Q, and he's got this old car that's just hanging together, and it's got a V2 motor in it, and the air conditioning doesn't work, and he's kind of feeling insecure already, and all of a sudden this guy with this big truck pulls up, and he's envious of the truck. Now, here's jealousy. So Sarah and Jennifer are best friends. Jennifer met Carla playing bunco. Jennifer is playing a lot of tennis with Carla these days and having some long lunches with her after the matches. So Sarah is a bit jealous of Carla. So here now we have the third person that's involved, and there's a differences between now. Jealousy and envy have the same exact emotions. So, they make us feel the same. It's just the cause of them that gets us to that place that's a little bit different. So these emotions, they go back to the beginning of time. So at this point, we're in Genesis chapter 37. Jealousy actually happened in Genesis chapter 3 with Cain and Abel. So it goes back to the beginning of time. We're in Genesis chapter 37, 99.9% of the Bible is still to be written at this place. Here's another example of jealousy. So Joseph was 17 years old. Jacob gave him a coat. It was a coat of many colors. They did this little play about it back a few years ago. Now, Genesis describes it as ornate, as beautiful. Now, guess how many of the 12 boys got this coat? There's one. One of the 12 got this coat, and they could all tell that Joseph was Jacob's favorite. Now, in Genesis chapter 37, verse 4, the Bible says, But when his brothers saw that the father, Jacob, loved him, Joseph, more than all the other brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Okay, so this one is jealousy. All the brothers are jealous of Joseph because they want a better relationship with Jacob, but Jacob is playing favorites, namely giving this coat to Joseph. Now, what does God tell us to do to other people? God tells us to love them, right? So yes, Jesus is like, what's the most important thing to do? And Jesus says, well, you love God and you love people. Now, they hated him, and the reason they hated him is because they were jealous of him. Now, you cannot simultaneously fill out God's purpose and God's commandment for your life to love other people when you're jealous of them. Those two emotions cannot simultaneously happen at the same time. So Joseph then, he has a dream in the middle of chapter 37, and Joseph was going to make a living out of dreams and interpreting dreams, and we'll run into this in a little bit. So he tells his brothers the dream, he tells his dad the dreams, and in verse 11, when it's done, the Bible says here, and his brothers envied him. Now here they're envying, this coat that he has, and they're also envying his ability to dream and interpret these dreams, and he was just getting warmed up. So, one of the things you need to know about jealousy and envy is this. Jealousy and envy are a relational, an emotional, and a spiritual disease. These things will mess you up faster than probably almost anything else. Now, if you want to mess up your life, here's how you do it. You be insecure. You don't be grateful. You live as very entitled. And you don't be content with what you have. So Shakespeare would have been born in Stratford-upon-Avon in the UK. He would have been born in 1564. He died 52 years later in 1616. And for those of you that have read Shakespeare, what did he write about? He wrote about envy and he wrote about jealousy. You go to most of his plays, and that's the theme. And he says in Othello, "Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat that it feeds on." So you've heard the phrase before, he's green with envy, or she's green with jealousy, this is where it would come from. Now, let's look at what jealousy then does to Joseph and his brothers, and then make the application of what jealousy and envy is going to do to us. So Joseph just had this dream. He's wearing this bright and colorful coat. Now, the 10 older brothers from the 3 other mothers, I didn't even mean to rhyme there. That's really cool. I'm not usually much of a rapper. There's no such thing as Norwegian rap. You can Google it. It says church came up empty. So I got to go back to my notes. I was talking about something. It's a good time to get some water. I know what I was talking about. So the brothers sent Joseph on this wild goose chase, and they're plotting to kill him. They wanted to kill him. They were so jealous, so envious that death was going to work out best for them. So they weren't where they said they're going to be. They were in this town called Dothan. He goes to where they said they were. The guy says, no, you got to go to Dothan. That's where they said they're going to go. He goes to Dothan. Now, what they did is they surprised him. They took off his coat and kind of watered it up, and they threw him at the bottom of a dry well. And they were just going to leave him there to die. So this is really odd. After they drop in the bottom of this well, they said, let's just sit down and have a meal. And they're eating chicken and rice, and all of a sudden they see these travelers who would be going to Egypt, and it was Judah who said, I got a better idea. Let's not kill him. That'd be kind of mean. He's our brother. So let's do this instead. Let's sell him into slavery. These people from Midian who are going to Egypt, we'll just get some money out of them. They can take him to Egypt. At least he'll be alive. He'll be a slave for the rest of his life, but we'll get some money and we can split it up among us. So they sold their brother into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. Then they tried to cover it up. They killed a goat. They took the coat of many colors. They spilled blood on it. They ripped it up a little bit, and they took it back to the dad, Jacob, and you'll see a picture of it here behind me. This is the brothers giving the coat back to the dad, Jacob, and said, I don't know what happened. We found this coat, and it looks like a wild animal has killed this brother that we love so much, and your beloved son. Now, in Genesis chapter 37, verses 31 and 32, the Bible specifically says, "Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe, in the blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with this message, 'Look what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?'" So this is what jealousy and envy will do. Jealousy and envy will lead to death, and if it's not the death of a person, it can be the death of a friendship. It can be the death of a family as we know it. It can be the death of a hope. It can be the death of a dream. It can be the death of emotional health. It can spin us into depression. Ultimately, jealousy and envy will move us away from God and cause the most painful death that any of us could ever experience, the death of our soul. Iron is eaten by rust, but souls are consumed by envy. And as you see that iron slowly decaying, that's what envy and jealousy will do to us. It will slowly and relentlessly eat away at the quality of our life. Now, we live in a media world that's just saturated with images and messages, and it's so much more difficult for us today than it was for Joseph and his brothers back then. Than it was for Shakespeare and his boys in the 15 and the 1600s. Have you ever flipped through cable TV stations 9, 10 o'clock at night, and they have this show that's on, and it's called Beautiful Homes and Great Estates. Gosh, you watch these, and do people actually live in these places? And then you start to think, gosh, I wish I lived in a place like that. That'd be cool. Then the thing is we all live in nice houses. Most of us have air conditioning. We have a roof over our heads. We have a kitchen where we can make food. There's bathrooms, multiple bathrooms in most houses. You just you can look on Facebook and you can see that all these friends, and you thought you're one of their friends, and they're out with each other and they're having fun. And you're wondering where the heck is my invitation to that party? And all of a sudden jealousy happens. In the media that we are constantly barraged by leads us to this place of comparison, which takes us to these dark places of envy and jealousy, which can lead to all sorts of death. Now, the oldest words ring true today. If we go to Exodus, it's either the 9th or the 10th commandment, depending on whether you use Exodus or Deuteronomy. And oftentimes, if I would say, give me the 10 commandments, just don't lie, don't steal, all those sorts of things. The last one says you must not covet. Don't be envious. Don't be jealous. That's the last one. It's almost trying to make a point of your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, or a male or female servant, or ox or donkey. Not a problem for most of us, but you say motorcycle or boat or car, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. William Penn says the jealous are troublesome to others, but a torment to themselves. And here's where you go with this. Okay, so if we're envious of someone or jealous of someone, we might be able to make their life a little bit difficult. But do you know who the envy and the jealousy ends up just consuming? It's the person who's envious and the person who's jealous. So number 2 is you have better options than envy and jealousy. You do. There's a choice you make, and you have better options. I have never met a person yet that has gotten to the end of their life and says, Craig, I just wish I would have spent more time being envious of other people. If I could have just carried around that discontentment and that anger and that sense of entitlement, I think my life would have been a whole lot better. And if I could have just been a little bit more jealous, I think it would have wrecked a few more relationships. No one's ever going to say that. Never. Joseph, he had better options. And Joseph, he had a lot of reasons to be jealous, and he had a lot of reasons to be envious, if anybody ever did. Like, he was envious of the freedom that his brothers had. They weren't slaves in Egypt like he was. He's probably jealous of the relationship that the 10 of them had and he didn't have. Like, they're his brothers. Like, he wanted to love them and be loved by them. So then, and this is the way life works out, hardship leads to, one of the most beautiful stories and the happiest endings that you'll ever see. So there's a famine in Israel. This famine, and the brothers, they were run out of food. So they went from Israel to Egypt, and they didn't know this, but Joseph became a somebody. You know how I told you he could dream things and he could interpret dreams? Well, it turned out that this guy Pharaoh, who was like the boss in Egypt, found out about this, and Joseph became his right-hand man. And when Pharaoh got a little bit lazy, Joseph kind of took over running the country. So I heard that there was these 10 brothers from Israel that were coming to get some food and see if they could take it back to their homeland. And he just thought that was a little bit too ironic, a little bit too suspicious, and he called them to the place where he worked, and he recognized every last one of them. They didn't recognize him because he was dressed like a king, and kings don't dress like commoners. His face would have been covered up, and how would you feel? These brothers that try to sell you, they tried to kill you. What would you do? He probably dealt with some envy. He'd probably dealt with some jealousy. And you know what he did? He said, I got better options. I can end this generational curse right here and right now. So I said to him, he says, there's another brother. And they were amazed that he knew this. There was another brother. He's younger than all of you. And you need to go back and you need to get him. And then come back and we'll talk about food. So they went and they got Benjamin. Benjamin and the 10 brothers, they went to Egypt. And now Joseph, he could have done whatever he wanted. He could have killed him. He could have sent him packing without any food. And he went over to Benjamin and he looked at the other brothers and he took off his little mask and he says, I want you guys to know something. I'm your brother, Joseph. And I'm so glad you're here. Then he went to Benjamin, his little brother, and he hugged Benjamin. And then he says some of the most beautiful words that we find in the Old Testament. He doesn't say, I'm going to judge you, I'm going to condemn you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to send you packing without any food. He says, I'll take care of you. And there are still 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise, your household and all your animals will starve. You have better options than jealousy and envy with one act of forgiveness, with one act of grace. Joseph changed the entire history of the family, the entire history of Israel, and the entire history of the world. This is the first and perhaps the best Old Testament example that we have of grace. Now, don't be that guy. Don't be that girl, who does the jealousy and the envy and the comparison and the insecure stuff. Get grateful, hustle hard, and encourage everybody. We have better options. Encouraging is going to be a better option. So Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, therefore criticize one another. He doesn't say that, does he? He says, therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as you're doing. Gosh, we live in a world that's full of critics. Now, critics can have a positive social function. I think like T.S. Eliot, Edgar Allan Poe, Kierkegaard, he was a critic of the Danish church. Maybe someone like Michael Moore today, could be one of those critics. But unless God has specifically called you to be a critic and have some type of positive social function, which he has not. Be an encourager. Be an encourager. Every single person I know prefers being encouraged to being judged. So stop judging and start encouraging. I remember one time, this was a long time ago, this girl, she just was one of those girls, 17, 18 years old probably, and she just seemed like she had everything together. Like this high school guy was her youth minister, and her parents wanted to talk to me and her at the same time, and basically they said, we want you to help us talk some sense into this girl. So they start talking, and they have like this laundry list of her imperfections. They were by far her biggest critics, and it was painful to listen to this. I could just hear this I could see her heart breaking with every word that they said. So, she doesn't do the laundry, she puts the dishes in the dishwasher wrong, she got in a car wreck and, put a little scratch on the side of her Jeep, she got a B on a biology test. And they just had all these things, and my heart broke for this girl because her parents were critics, not encouragers. I just said, here's the deal. I'll tell you what I see. I see this brave and courageous young woman that studies her butt off and does great in school. I see this young woman that when we go to serve people, she's the first person that does it. She gets out there before anybody else. I see this person that loves and accepts people for who they are. I see this girl with so much beauty. I see this girl with so much potential. I see this girl with so much passion for life. And yeah, she's going to have some imperfections. Join the club. We all do. I told the parents, here's what I want you to do. I want both of you to tell her 5 things that you absolutely love about her. Yeah, I don't know how the story turned out, but I know this next few minutes were as beautiful gets. It was like this holy, sacred moment where all of a sudden these parents transform from being critics to encouragers, because that's what this girl needed most in life. Now, encouragement is one better option. The other better option is gratitude. Encouraging and grateful as opposed to envious and jealous. That's a pretty good upgrade, right? So, Paul says later, 7 verses later, give thanks in all circumstances. Not some circumstances, not when things are going your way, not when things are perfect. Be grateful in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. So I got it's not a new car, it's a 2009. I bought it last September. I have a son, Benjamin, he's 16, almost 17, so I gave him my 2007 car. So I was excited. I had this car that was 2 years newer than the one I had. It was a 2009. I drive it home from the dealership, park it in the garage. The next morning, I go to start the car. The car doesn't start. I said, well, this is kind of odd. I just bought this thing yesterday, and they told me it worked fine. So I jumped the battery. It worked fine. Parked the car. Next morning, didn't work. So I called the guy up. I said, look, the car you sold me, it doesn't start in the morning. I got to jump it, and this isn't going to happen every day. Is there a way I can, bring it back in? Y'all can look at it. And, he felt really bad. He says, I'm so sorry. Yeah, bring it in. We'll fix it. We'll make it right. And they did. So I bought a Volvo, but I bought it from the place that sells BMWs and Land Rovers. And, when they fix a car, they always give you, a loaner car that's new. So I was thinking, this is going to be pretty cool. I get myself a BMW or a Land Rover, and they gave me a brand new Range Rover with 700 miles on it. And I looked at the ticket on this car, and this car cost over $100,000. It was crazy. It was this beautiful car, and I was driving it. I got it on a Friday. I did not bring it to church at Millard West on Sunday because I didn't want you all to see me driving it. You're like, wow, those are some pretty expensive sermons. So the office staff can verify the story. I was driving around this Land Rover for over a week and a half. And finally, they called me up and they said, Craig, do you have a black Land Rover that you're driving? I'm like, maybe. I said, no, I do. I mean, you guys still have my car. And they said, you brought your car in? I said, well, no, you guys were going to fix it. It's a new car. And like, he said, okay, I'm going to find your car. So then I blocked that number so they couldn't call me anymore. Actually, I did, and I just wanted to. So they could not find my car. And they're like, okay, we can't find your car. And I said, well, when you find your car, just give me a call, and I'll bring the Range Rover back in. So my car ended up being at the Volvo dealership. There was like some recall. It just turned out the battery was too small, but then they fixed this recall issue. So I took the Range Rover back in reluctantly. It was like the longest 8-mile drive of my life. Stopped and got Sonic and looked good just one more time. So a few days later, I was at a stoplight at 180th and Q, where I spend about half my day. And a Range Rover pulled up next to me. I was thinking, oh, Range Rover must be nice, huh? Those leather seats and that premium sound system and that really comfortable ride that you got there. And then I thought to myself, I got a better option. I got a lot better option. It's really cool he gets to drive that, but we got 3 drivers in our house and we got 3 cars. That's really cool. They all work. That's really cool. In fact, we're so blessed that each of these cars has a house that it can live in. Because we got a 3-car garage and we can fit our car. Ideally, we could. One of the bays doesn't work because we got stuff in there. So one of the cars stays outside. But all of a sudden, like, the preacher learned that when you replace envy with gratitude, amazing things can happen. I believe that life is best lived when we are thankful for what we have and we are pursuing what we want. So I want us to make an upgrade this morning. I'm going to try to do it, and I want you to try to do it too. Let's try to upgrade our envy and our jealousy to encouragement and gratitude. Your world and the world will be a lot better place. I'm going to lead us in a time of prayer right now. I'm going to explain what I'm going to do, and it's going to be a little bit different than typically how we do it, but I'm just going to do some encouragement. I want you to listen to these words. Just pretend. I'm not God. I don't make any pretense that I am, and I know you don't either. But just let's just pretend that it's God that's speaking to you these words, because I'm just going to take these words out of Scripture, and these are God's words. And then after I'm done with the encouragement, that I just hope it just goes into the depths of your soul. When I get done with the encouragement, I'm just going to be quiet. I'm going to be silent. It's going to be silent in here for a few moments. And what I want you to do is just personal time with God, where you get to practice and celebrate gratitude and all the good things that God is doing, has done, and will do in your life. So let us pray. So God, we come to you, and Lord, as I just look out here right now, I see so much talent, I see so much energy, I see so much passion, I see so much giftedness. Lord, there's so much blessing that exists in this room, and God, our lives are too short to be consumed with envy. Our lives are way too short to be overcome by jealousy. They just are. And Lord, help us to make these upgrades. God, you have said that you have accepted us. You have said that you have made us unique. You have told us that you have created us, and we are your masterpiece. And God, sometimes it's easy to look at the blessings of others, whether it's their attributes or their possessions, and wish that we had a little bit more. But God, as we come to you in a place where we just want to celebrate gratitude. So Lord, right now, in the silence of this room, hear from the depths of our hearts, just how grateful we are to you. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a place, maybe it's an attribute that you've given to us, maybe it's a person that you've blessed us with. But Lord, hear our prayers. We share our gratitude with you. Lord, a minute just doesn't seem like it's long enough. But God, we're grateful. And Lord, I pray for all of us right now that you'll help us to upgrade from envy and jealousy to these higher places, these better options of encouragement and gratitude. And Lord, I pray right now, I just have this sense, I have this feeling that there might be a few of us here this morning, and just like Joseph, we have this choice in front of us, to change the family history, to make a phone call, to send a message, to do a visit, where we can err on the side of grace and forgiveness and not criticism and judgment. Lord, help us to embrace those we haven't embraced for a while and let go of these lesser things and cling on to greater things. So God, now together in one voice, we come and pray the prayer that you taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.